Are they sins that God is okay with? We are going to answer that question in this video. Let's just jump straight into the Word of God as we look at a passage where it looks like God is actually condoning sin. If you watch to the end, I will show you the verse that unlocks this topic wide open. Exodus 1 verses 15 to 22 say, "Then the king of Egypt said to the Hebrew midwives, one of whom was named Shiphrah, and the other Puah, when you serve as midwife to the Hebrew women and see them on the birth stool, if it is a son, you shall kill him. But if it is a daughter, she shall live." But the midwives feared God and did not do as the king of Egypt commanded them, but let the male children live. So the king of Egypt called to the midwives and said to them, "Why have you done this, and let the male child live?" The midwives said to Pharaoh, "Because the Hebrew women are not like the Egyptian women, for they are vigorous and give birth before the midwife comes to them." So God dealt well with the midwives, and the people multiplied and grew very strong. And because the midwives feared God, he gave them families. Then Pharaoh commanded all his people, "Every son that is born to the Hebrews you shall cast into the Nile, but you shall let every daughter live." There are well over 100 verses in the Bible that talks about lies and deceptions as a sin. Yet in this verse, God doesn't condemn them, but actually blesses them for lying. Why is this sin acceptable? Surely disobeying civil leadership is a sin, and definitely lying is a sin. So what I'm about to say now needs some serious discernment. That there are times when the letter of the law needs to be broken in order to fulfill the spirit of the law. So what about this sin made it acceptable to God? It's the motive. The motive behind these sins is love and obedience. And we see in the word it says that love covers a multitude of sins. Many people might think this is a stretch of the interpretation of this verse that we're talking about, but bear with me for a moment. The verse says that love covers a multitude of sins. And if we go ahead to Galatians 5 verse 23, we see that love is part of the fruit of the Spirit. But what is particularly interesting is that towards the end of the passage, in verse 23, it says, "And against these things there is no law." This means that to God, your motive matters more than your actions. Anything done out of love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, and self-control, against these things there is no law. When you act out of these motives, you actually are removed from the burden of the law. So you see in the verse that I read above, it's the love of God, and it's the love of these babies, and it's the love of these mothers that overruled the lies that they had to tell to save these babies. Because it's not just black and white. However, if you're getting any value from this video, please hit the like button. It helps with the YouTube algorithm. So let me quickly put my case to you so that I prove what I'm saying. Another example of this is Rahab and the Hebrew spies. That when Rahab had hidden the Hebrew spies, she lied to the men that came and asked her about these spies, telling them that they had gone away, meanwhile she was hiding them. And then we have in the book of 1 Samuel, David, when he goes and takes the showbread from the priests and eats it himself and gives it to the men that he's with. The law specifically said that this was for the priests and no other person was meant to eat it. The key difference here is, if we observe human nature, people tend to lie or misrepresent themselves in order to avoid negative consequences. But we see in these situations where God is pleased with this sin, these people lie for the protection of others. And when you actually look at it, they're not avoiding negative consequences, but are often drawing negative consequences upon themselves. Which means that God also looks down upon people who do the right things, but with the wrong motives. This is one of the paradoxes of the Christian walk. But this is the key that unlocks it all. That Philippians 2 verses 3 and 4 say, "Do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility count others more significant than yourselves. Let each of you look not to its own interests, but also to the interests of others." This verse shows the difference between selfishness and humility. You see, the sins that God is okay with were the ones that had other people in mind. They were not trying to look after themselves and their own ambitions and their own needs, but they were looking to the interests of others. And when you look to the interests of others, displaying the fruit of the Spirit, there is no law. You are no longer bound. If you want to learn more about the fruit of the Spirit, you can check out this video that I did an in-depth teaching on the fruit of the Spirit. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.